got over coffee when they dreamed of a wedding at sunset. Once warm, those memories now felt like shards of broken glass piercing her whenever she tried to touch them. I was a fool, she whispered, voice trembling. Love doesn't exist. Not in this world. Not in 2015, when everything is just likes and empty promises. She wiped her tears, the corners of her eyes burning. 3 months had passed since the breakup, yet the pain felt raw like an open wound that bled at the slightest touch. She tried going to work, laughing with colleagues, even downloading a dating app. But every time she saw a new profile, she saw Mark's face, his sly smile, and she deleted the app instantly. I need a break, she thought. I need to leave this place. The thought of Oakwood, her hometown 2 hours away, flickered in her mind. There she had once been a dreamy little girl who believed in fairy tales. Maybe, just maybe, that place could help her find the part of herself she had lost. Emily rummaged through a drawer and found an old photograph, its edges yellowed. In it, a 10-year-old Emily stood beneath the ancient oak tree in Oakwood Park, her eyes sparkling like stars. That oak tree, more than 200 years old, was the town's symbol, its sprawling branches stretching wide like arms embracing the sky. The little girl Emily had once sat beneath it, reading her mother's romance novels, dreaming of a prince who would kiss her under the green canopy. She laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. How naive, she murmured, tossing the photo on the table. Yet deep inside, a quiet voice whispered, maybe going back is better than staying here with ghosts. She made the decision quickly, almost impulsively. Calling her mother, she announced she would return to Oakwood that weekend. I just need a few days to rest, she said, trying to sound calm. Her mother, Ellen, chuckled softly over the phone, her voice warm. The house is always open for you, Emily. But even that tenderness couldn't soothe the emptiness inside her. She packed a few clothes, an untouched notebook, and her iPhone, the device she hated yet couldn't let go of. The next morning, Emily drove out of Richmond. The sky was clear blue, but her mind was clouded like a storm. The car radio played Adele's "Someone Like You," the mournful voice cutting into her wound. Never mind, I'll find someone like you. The lyrics echoed, and Emily shut it off, tears streaming down her cheeks. She wondered if anyone in this world truly kept their promises, truly loved someone through the years, or if it was all just the fairy tales she once believed as a child. As the car passed golden cornfields and winding country roads, Oakwood slowly came into view. The small town was just as she remembered: white wooden houses, low fences, and the central square with its towering oak tree. Emily pulled up in front of her parents' two-story house, its porch filled with blooming hydrangeas. Ellen came out to greet her, hugging her tightly. Her eyes seeing through the sorrow Emily tried to hide. "Are you all right?" she asked. Emily nodded, forcing a smile. "Just tired, Mom." That evening, after a family dinner of her mother's stew, Emily sat alone on the porch. The night breeze carried the scent of dry grass and faint wood smoke. She opened her phone, skimmed through work emails, but couldn't focus. A message from Lisa popped up. "Hey, you okay? Is it nice being home?" Emily didn't reply. Instead, she rose to her feet and decided to walk. Maybe Oakwood Park, where the oak tree had stood through centuries, would bring her some peace, or at least help her forget, even for a moment, the shattered pieces of her heart. She walked under the silver moonlight, her sneakers tapping softly on the pavement. The park wasn't far, just a few blocks away. When the oak tree came into sight, tall and majestic, Emily stopped, her breath catching. It looked unchanged, as though time itself had never touched it. But she was no longer the same. She was a 28-year-old woman. Her heart scarred, her faith broken. Why am I even here? She asked herself. But her feet carried her forward as if the oak itself was calling her, whispering something she had yet to understand. The morning sunlight slipped through the curtains of Emily's old bedroom painting, pale golden streaks across the floral carpet her mother had once so carefully chosen. The room remained unchanged, the single bed covered with a blue quilt, the bookshelf still lined with the teen novels she once adored, and the faint scent of old wood lingering as though time itself had forgotten this place. Emily lay there, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Sleep had barely touched her the night before. Memories of Mark of broken promises circled in her head like restless waves, small but relentless, washing over her again and again. I came back to forget, she told herself, yet her heart felt heavy, as though she had carried all of Richmond's unhealed pain with her. She sat up, ran her fingers through her messy brown hair, and reached for her phone out of habit. An email from her boss reminding her of next week's report flashed on the screen, but she couldn't bring herself to read it. Instead, she scrolled through Facebook, instantly regretting it. A former friend had posted a cheerful family photo in front of an early Christmas tree, captioned, "Love is everything." Emily gave a faint, bitter laugh, tightening her grip on the phone. Love is everything. Then why am I left with nothing but emptiness? She turned off the screen and tossed the phone onto the bed, feeling as if the whole world was parading a happiness she could never touch. A gentle knock came at the door. "Emily, breakfast is ready. I made pancakes," her mother's soft voice called. Emily drew a deep breath, forcing a smile before heading downstairs. Breakfast was a familiar ritual in the Carter home, her father James reading the local paper, her mother bustling about the kitchen, the aroma of coffee and maple syrup filling the air. But today that warmth only made Emily feel more out of place. She ate in silence, giving short answers to her mother's questions, eyes avoiding hers. "I'm fine, Mom," she said, though her voice wavered, as if even she didn't believe the words. After breakfast, Emily decided to go for a walk. She needed fresh air, something to fill the hollow space inside her. Oakwood in the morning was serene, so different from Richmond's restless pace. White wooden houses lined the quiet streets, low fences dotted with wild daisies and birdsong echoing from somewhere nearby. She walked slowly, sneakers tapping softly on the pavement, each step pulling her back to childhood days when she had roamed the town carefree. But now every corner summoned memories of Mark, the times he had driven to pick her up, the hurried hugs before she returned to the city. She shook her head, trying to chase away the images, but they clung like shadows. Oakwood Park soon came into view, with its ancient oak tree standing proudly at the center, a silent guardian of the town. Its sprawling branches stretched wide, covering the sky, while its exposed roots curved like veins of time. Emily paused, inhaling deeply, catching the earthy scent of dry leaves and damp soil. She remembered long summer afternoons beneath this tree, book in hand, dreaming of a love eternal like the ones in her novels. "Foolish," she muttered, though her heart ached faintly, as if the little girl inside her was still there, pleading to believe once more. Emily Carter. "Is that you?" A cheerful voice broke through her thoughts. Emily turned and saw Sarah Mitchell, her high school best friend, now a radiant woman with blonde hair tied high and a warm smile. Sarah was married, had a child, and seemed to overflow with happiness. Emily forced a smile, a mix of joy and envy, welling into it. "Sarah, it's been so long." The two sat down on a wooden bench near the oak, talking as if no time had passed. Sarah spoke about her life, her husband working on a nearby farm, their 3-year-old son, and her involvement in organizing the town's harvest festival. Emily listened, but her chest tightened. "You really are happy," she said, her voice tinged with bitterness. Sarah tilted her head, her perceptive eyes catching something in Emily's tone. "And you, Em? How's Richmond? Anyone special?" The casual question pierced Emily like a needle straight into an unhealed wound. She gave a brief account of Mark, how he had shattered her world. Sarah held her hand, listening silently without judgment. "Love is hard," Sarah finally said, her voice low. "But you know, sometimes it's worth it." She gestured toward the oak. "Have you heard about the Thompsons' 60th anniversary? They're celebrating under this tree this weekend. Their love, it's like this oak through every storm, still standing strong." Emily frowned, caught between curiosity and skepticism. 60 years? Shilly, how did they manage that? Sarah's smile sparkled. "You should come see. There's something about them, about this tree, that makes people believe things are still possible." Emily didn't reply, but Sarah's words planted a seed within her. She looked at the oak, its leaves swaying gently in the breeze, and wondered if anything here could ever heal her fractured heart. When Sarah left, promising to meet again at the festival, Emily remained alone. The wind rustled through the oak leaves as she closed her eyes, letting childhood memories flood back. She remembered carving a tiny heart into its bark, once writing her name alongside that of an imagined prince. Rising to her feet, she stepped closer, searching for the mark, but time had long since erased it. "Nothing lasts forever," she whispered, yet deep within a faint spark of hope flickered fragile as a lantern in a storm. She decided she would return to the park for the celebration, not because she believed in love, but to pass the time to see whether the Thompson story was truly different or just another illusion waiting to break. But as she walked away, she didn't realize that the oak with its deep roots and steadfast branches was quietly whispering to her, calling her back to her own heart. The late October sun of 2015 cast a gentle orange glow over Oakwood Park, as if the whole world were wrapped in a warm blanket. Emily stood at the edge of the park, her hands buried deep in her coat pockets, her gaze drifting toward the ancient oak. Its sprawling branches swayed in the breeze, whispering stories she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. After her conversation with Sarah yesterday, she had decided to come not out of pure curiosity, but because of a feeling she couldn't quite define. It was as though the oak itself was calling her, pulling her away from the waves of sorrow that had been crashing inside her. She walked slowly, her sneakers crunching softly on the carpet of dry leaves. The park was livelier than usual today. A few townsfolk were hanging golden and white paper lanterns on the lower branches, preparing for Henry and Margaret Thompson's 60th wedding anniversary. Emily watched from a distance. An elderly man, tall and slender, yet steady, was carefully tying a ribbon around the oak's trunk. That must be Henry Thompson, she thought, recalling Sarah's stories. Beside him was a petite woman with neatly pinned silver hair, arranging a small table with a cream cloth and a vase of daisies. Margaret Emily guessed, feeling a strange warmth radiating from the woman's gentle gestures. Emily told herself she would only watch for a moment before leaving. She didn't want to be drawn into any story, especially not a love story, something she no longer believed in. But just as she turned to go, Margaret looked up, her eyes meeting Emily's. Her smile brief, as it was carried a strange power, like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Dear, would you come? Give me a hand?" She called, her voice soft, yet clear enough to draw Emily out of her tangled thoughts. Emily hesitated, her heart quickening. She didn't want to get involved, didn't want to risk being swept into a story that might rekindle hope only to end in disappointment. Yet her feet, as if with a will of their own, carried her forward. What can I help with?" she asked, her voice uncertain. Margaret smiled and handed her a paper lantern. "Hang this on that branch for me, dear. Be careful, it's delicate." Emily nodded, feeling the fragile paper in her hands light as the trust she had once lost. While she hung the lantern, Emily found herself near Henry. He was tying another ribbon, his hands trembling faintly with age but steady nonetheless. "Are you new here?" he asked, his deep voice carrying echoes of another time. Emily shook her head. "I grew up in Oakwood, but I live in Richmond now. I'm just visiting." Henry nodded, his eyes thoughtful, as if he could see right through her. "Oakwood has a way of bringing people back," he said, gesturing to the oak. "Like this tree. It's seen everything from the town's beginnings to moments like this." Emily didn't answer, but his words stirred her curiosity. She glanced at the oak, its rough bark etched with the years. "Today must be special for you both, isn't it?" she asked, trying to keep her tone neutral. Henry smiled, the expression deepening the lines on his weathered face. 60 years, young lady. 60 years since Margaret and I stood under this oak and promised forever." A pang struck Emily's chest. 60 years. The number felt unreal in her world, where love stories dissolved after a few text messages. "How did you do it?" she blurted out, her voice edged with doubt. Henry paused, looking at her with no judgment, only quiet understanding. "It wasn't easy," he said. "But 60 years ago, under this oak, I saw Margaret reading a book, and I knew I couldn't live without her. That's where it began." His story tugged at Emily's heart, but it also stirred memories of Mark. She had once believed the same of him, that she couldn't live without him. Yet he had chosen someone else as easily as swapping filters on Instagram. She lowered her head, hiding the tears that threatened to fall. Margaret, sensing the shift in her, walked over and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Are you all right, darling?" she asked, her voice tender as a lullaby. Emily nodded, though her voice trembled. "I'm just curious. 60 years is such a long time." Margaret smiled, her eyes sparkling, as if she were gazing back through an entire lifetime. "It is long, but every day was worth it. This oak has been our witness. Back then I was sitting here reading, and Henry, just a young soldier home from war, stood watching me. I thought he was a fool. But then, he said something that changed my mind." "What did he say?" Emily asked, her voice softening, almost childlike in its eagerness for a fairy tale. Henry chimed in, a playful glint in his tone. "I told her, 'Miss, if you don't agree to have coffee with me, I'll stand here all day until this tree falls.'" Emily laughed, truly laughed for the first time in weeks, and the sound felt like a small weight lifting from her chest. But as the lightness bloomed, another memory rushed in. Mark, too, had once said sweet words, had once made her laugh. She turned away, afraid the Thompsons might see the doubt clouding her eyes. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I'm just not good with stories like this." Margaret tilted her head, her gaze gentle yet sharp. "You've been hurt, haven't you?" she asked. Emily stayed silent, but her silence was answer enough. A sudden gust of wind swept through, knocking a lantern to the ground. Emily bent quickly to pick it up. When she straightened, she saw Henry opening an old wooden box, its edges worn smooth with time. Inside lay a black and white wedding photograph of the Thompsons, young and radiant, standing beneath the oak. "We buried this here after our wedding," Henry said, his voice low, "as a promise to the tree that we'd return no matter what." Emily traced a finger over Margaret's youthful smile in the photo. Something in that moment, in the sincerity, in the steadfastness, pressed against her heart. "Is there anything else I can help with?" she asked, her voice unsteady. Margaret handed her another vase of flowers, smiling. "You've helped more than you know. Stay with us, will you? This oak likes souls like yours." Emily nodded, unsure if she agreed out of politeness or from a deeper longing to believe in something greater than herself. She went on hanging lanterns, her gaze drifting now and then to the Thompsons and the oak, as if all three were weaving her into a story she wasn't ready to fully understand. But inside her a small seed had been planted, and though she wouldn't admit it, it had already begun to grow. The sun sank slowly toward the horizon, leaving streaks of fiery orange and soft purple across Oakwood's sky. The park now glimmered beneath the lanterns Emily had helped hang. Each lantern shone like a tiny star, twinkling between the oak's branches, highlighting the ancient tree's grandeur. Emily stood by the cream-covered table, a bouquet of wild daisies in her hands, her heart tangled like yarn toyed with by a restless cat. Meeting the Thompsons earlier, brief as it was, had left her strangely unsettled, a swirl of doubt mixed with a fragile longing to believe in something greater than the scars carved into her heart. Margaret stepped forward, her frail but nimble hands setting a pastry on the table. The faint scent of vanilla and cinnamon drifted into the air, and suddenly Emily was a child again, remembering summer afternoons in her mother's kitchen when the world seemed nothing but sunlight. "Do you like cake, dear?" Margaret asked, her sparkling eyes inviting Emily into a story. Emily nodded, forcing a thin smile. "Yes, I do. Did you make this yourself?" she asked, trying to cover the emptiness where thoughts of Mark still lingered. "Oh, yes," Margaret replied proudly. "When Henry lost his job, I baked to earn extra money. The 1970s weren't easy, child." Emily frowned, curiosity stirring. "Lost his job? I thought you two—" She stopped, not wanting to sound impolite, but Margaret understood. She gave a knowing smile, one that carried a lifetime within it. "You thought our love was always a fairy tale, didn't you?" "No, darling. There were days when all we had was each other and this oak to hold on to." Emily glanced at Henry, who was carefully adjusting a ribbon on the tree. His posture was slightly bent with age, yet he radiated resilience, as though time had only forged his strength. "How did you get through it?" she asked softly, though the question was as much for herself as it was for them. A desperate plea from her wounded heart. Henry turned, having caught her words. He walked toward her, his deep brown eyes glinting with memory. In 19C, the factory I worked at shut down. No job, 3 little children, and our savings dwindling. Margaret worked double shifts, teaching by day, baking at night. There were times I thought I wasn't worthy of her. He paused, looking at Margaret, his gaze embracing her across decades. Emily felt a sharp ache in her chest. She remembered those last days with Mark, the distance, the arguments about money, work, the future, how they made her feel like she was never enough. "But didn't you blame him?" she asked suddenly, her voice trembling. Margaret laid her hand gently over Emily's, her touch soft as a breeze. "Of course I did, child. I was angry, I cried. But I remembered that loving Henry didn't mean waiting for him to be perfect. It meant choosing him even on the worst days." Her words pierced through the walls of doubt Emily had built around herself. She lowered her head, trying to hide the tears brimming in her eyes. She thought of Mark, of all the times she had tried to hold on only to be met with his indifference. "I thought I could fix everything," she whispered, unsure if she was speaking to them or herself. "But some things just can't be fixed." Henry sat down on a wooden bench nearby, motioning for Emily to join him. "You know," he began, his voice low, like an old story being retold, "when I met Margaret in 1955, I had just come back from the army. I had nothing but a heart and a few promises. Her family didn't like me, called me a poor soldier. But Margaret, she believed in me." He looked at her, then his smile warm as autumn sunlight. Emily listened, feeling as though she'd stepped into another world, one where love wasn't measured by hurried texts or social media likes. "And then what happened?" she asked, her tone softer now, curious like a child. Margaret continued, her voice steady yet tender. "We fought, we doubted. Once I thought Henry would never return from Vietnam. I cried under this oak, begging it to keep him safe." Emily looked at the oak, its leaves rustling gently in the breeze, as if nodding to the story. "This tree, it's special to you both, isn't it?" she asked. Henry nodded, his hand resting on the bark, like greeting an old friend. "Every year, no matter the hardships, we came back here. One kiss beneath the oak, that was our promise. Not out of romance, but because it reminded us love is work, a choice we made every day." Emily felt her chest tighten. She remembered the early days with Mark, when everything felt fresh, when she thought love was a calm river. But the river had dried, leaving only sharp stones at the bottom. "I don't know if I can choose like that again," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I tried, but he didn't choose me." Margaret leaned closer, her eyes brimming with compassion. "Darling, sometimes people leave and it isn't your fault. But don't let them steal your capacity to love. Love isn't a destination, it's a journey. Like this tree, it didn't grow in a day, but over centuries, through storms and drought." Her words swept through Emily like a cooling breeze over parched ground. She wanted to protest, to say that 2015 was different, that love had become nothing more than fleeting messages on Tinder. But when she met Margaret's unwavering gaze, she saw something immovable, like the oak's roots burrowed deep in the earth. "Can I ask something?" Emily said hesitantly. "Did you ever fear losing each other?" Henry chuckled softly, though his eyes carried sorrow. "Of course. In 1966, I was drafted again. Margaret wrote me a letter promising to wait, even if it meant waiting forever. But the letter was lost, and I thought she had given up. I nearly broke apart." His voice caught thick with memory, but when I came back, she was still here beneath the oak with a kiss. Tears spilled down Emily's cheeks before she could stop them. Their story, simple as it was, felt like a flame rekindling a hope she thought had long burned out. She wiped her face quickly, embarrassed to bear her emotions before two strangers. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I didn't mean to." "It's all right, dear," Margaret said, squeezing her hand. "This oak has seen many tears, but it has seen even more smiles. Stay with us, help us finish this celebration. Perhaps you'll find something here. Emily nodded, uncertain whether she agreed out of politeness or from a deeper yearning to remain, to believe that love, fragile as it was, might still endure. She continued arranging flowers, her eyes drifting toward the Thompsons and the oak, as though all three were quietly telling her a story of endurance. Within her, a seed of hope, tiny but real, was beginning to crack open, ready one day to grow as strong as the oak before her. Afternoon in Oakwood shifted slowly into the violet hues of dusk, but the sky today was not as clear as the days before. Heavy gray clouds rolled in from the west, carrying the damp breath of an approaching storm. Emily stood beneath the oak's vast canopy, a white ribbon in her hand, her heart like a restless pond, rippling with the Thompsons' story. Their words about enduring love, about the hardships they had overcome, pierced her like tiny needles, pricking through the shell of doubt she had built around her heart. She wanted to believe, but every attempt summoned Mark's face, his sly smile and promises that had vanished like smoke. She tied the ribbon to a low branch, trying to focus on the task to silence the storm inside her mind. But then her phone buzzed in her coat pocket, a small vibration, yet it clenched her heart. She pulled it out. The screen lit up Mark. A message appeared, I was wrong. Can we talk? I miss you. Just a few words, but they crashed over her like a tidal wave, pulling her back into the pain she had fought so hard to bury. Emily froze her fingers, trembling on the screen. She remembered the night she had found his messages with another woman, the shrug of his shoulders when confronted as if their love had been nothing more than a game he could quit at will. I miss you, she whispered bitterly. Do you miss me, or do you miss controlling me? She wanted to reply, to scream that she didn't need him, that she had hurt enough. Yet deep down, a small, fragile part of her, the part that still loved him, whispered that maybe, just maybe, she should give him another chance. She shoved the phone back into her pocket, but her mind was like a boat adrift in a storm. She hurried out of the park, her steps quickening into almost a run, as if she could outrun everything Mark's message, her pain, even the tiny seed of hope the Thompsons had planted in her. But she didn't go far. Her feet carried her back to the oak as if it were a lighthouse in the tempest of her soul. She sank at its roots, leaning against the rough bark, and let the tears stream freely. The wind grew stronger, carrying cold gusts and the first drops of rain. Emily wrapped her arms around her knees, feeling as though the whole world was against her. Why, she whispered, not knowing if she asked the oak herself or fate itself. Why am I never enough? Why am I always the one left behind? Mark's face rose clearly in her mind the nights he held her in their Richmond apartment, the whispers of, I'll never leave you. But he had left easily as she could erase a text message. She felt like a broken shard of pottery, impossible to mend, no matter how hard she tried. The rain began to fall harder, cold drops soaking her coat and shoulders. Emily didn't move. She let it pour over her as if it could wash the ache from her chest. The oak shielded her partly, but not enough to keep her dry. She thought of the Thompsons, of their story. 60 years through lost jobs, illness, near partings. How did they do it? She choked. How did they not give up? Footsteps crunched over wet leaves. Emily looked up to see Henry and Margaret approaching under a large umbrella. Emily, you're soaked, Margaret exclaimed, hurrying forward. She pulled Emily up, covering her with the umbrella like a mother shielding a child. Why are you sitting here in the rain? Dear? Emily shook her head, unable to speak. Rain mixed with her tears, and shame welled up that they had seen her so fragile. Henry studied her, his eyes kind and steady, as though he had witnessed 1,000 lost souls in his lifetime. Something's happened, hasn't it? He asked, his deep voice both firm and gentle. Emily bit her lip, torn between hiding and releasing everything. At last the words spilled out. I got a message from him. He wants to come back. She faltered as if tearing open a wound. But I don't know what to do. I don't trust him anymore, but I I'm afraid I'll never find anyone else. Margaret took her hand, her fingers chilled from the rain, yet radiating warmth. Oh, darling, love does hurt sometimes, but pain is not the ending. She glanced at Henry, her eyes carrying a whole life's worth of memory. There was a time we thought we'd lost each other forever. In 1985, our eldest son James died in a car accident. I blamed Henry, he was the one who taught him to drive. I said things I regret to this day. Emily looked up stunned. She hadn't expected their love story to bear scars so deep. And how did you get through it? She asked, her voice shaking. Henry's tone dropped low, heavy with grief. We almost divorced. I couldn't face Margaret, couldn't even face myself. But one night I came to this oak, and Margaret was here too, crying just like you are now. We held each other and we promised not to let go. A wave of emotions surged through Emily. She thought of Mark, of how she had tried to hold on only to feel him push her away. But what if the other person doesn't want to try? She whispered. Margaret squeezed her hand firmly. Then you let them go, dear. Love isn't about holding someone at all costs. It's about finding the one who will stand in the rain with you like this oak, always here no matter the storm. Her words cut through the rain and the darkness in Emily's heart like a beam of light. Emily looked up at the oak, its leaves jeweled with raindrops like tiny gems. She thought of all the years the Thompsons had endured, of all the times they had chosen each other, even when everything else fell apart. I want to believe like you do, she said, her voice breaking, but I'm afraid. Henry laid a hand on her shoulder, his touch steady as the oak's trunk. Fear is natural, child, but don't let fear stop you from opening your heart. This oak has weathered countless storms, and yet it stands. So will you. He gestured to the base of the tree, where the old wooden box still rested, a reminder of promises that had never faded. The rain eased, leaving the air fresh, and the scent of damp earth rising around them. Emily stood, her coat heavy with water, but her spirit lighter. She looked at the Thompsons, not just as a love story, but as proof that love, though hard, could endure. I'll stay and help, she said with more certainty. I want to see the celebration. Margaret smiled, pulling her into a gentle embrace. Good girl. The oak will be glad to have you. Emily nodded, feeling a small but stubborn flame of hope spark within her like a seedling pushing through the soil after rain. She wasn't ready to forgive Mark, wasn't ready to bare her heart fully. But beneath the oak, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, her heart could grow again. The rain had stopped, leaving Oakwood Park fresh and shimmering with droplets clinging to the oak's leaves. The earthy scent of damp soil mixed with the faint fragrance of wood, a song of nature soothing Emily's soul. She stood beneath the oak, her coat still damp, but her heart lighter than before. The Thompsons' words, simple as they were, felt like carefully laid stones, forming a fragile bridge between her and hope. Wiping away her tears, she forced a small smile as Margaret patted her shoulder. Feeling better now, dear? Margaret asked, her voice warm like a cup of tea on a winter's day. Emily nodded, though her emotions remained tangled inside. Yes, better. I just need time. Margaret smiled knowingly, her eyes sparkling with understanding. Time is the friend of every wound. But love, dear, it's like this tree. It needs tending every day. Her words drew Emily's gaze upward to the oak's thick branches, whispering stories she couldn't yet fully grasp. Nearby, Henry carefully placed a small handwritten sign on the table, 60th anniversary, Henry and Margaret Thompson. Turning, he caught Emily watching and smiled, sunlight breaking through the canopy. Would you like to hear another story? He asked, his voice steady and warm. Emily hesitated, then nodded. She wasn't sure she was ready, but something in his tone made her want to stay, to listen, to learn what their journey might teach her about herself. They sat on the wooden bench, the dampness of the rain seeping through Emily's coat, though she hardly noticed. Henry began slowly, his voice carrying her into a distant time. In 1990, Margaret was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was the first time I thought I might lose her. He paused, his eyes fixed on Margaret as though he still saw the woman she was, then strong yet fragile. I was used to being the protector, but then I was helpless. All I could do was hold her hand, pray, and bring her to this oak whenever she had the strength. Emily's heart tightened. She thought of the times she had felt helpless with Mark when he grew distant, when their arguments over money and the future convinced her she wasn't enough. "Weren't you afraid," she asked softly, turning to Margaret, "afraid that everything would end?" Margaret gave a faint smile, one carrying invisible scars. "Of course I was. I was afraid I wouldn't see my children grow, that I wouldn't grow old with Henry. But every time we came here under this oak, I remembered love isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing love, even when you're afraid." Her words shone like light into Emily's darkest corners. She thought of Mark, of the way she had clung to him, hoping he would change. But he hadn't chosen her. That truth had made her feel like a tree uprooted, incapable of growing again. "But how did you know he wouldn't leave?" she asked, her voice trembling. "How could you trust that?" Margaret leaned closer, holding Emily's hand. "I didn't know, dear. I just chose to trust one day at a time. There were days Henry drove me crazy, like leaving dirty dishes in the sink for a week." She laughed, and Henry playfully frowned, chiming in, "And she's not exactly easy, always telling me to clean the garden." Emily burst out laughing for the first time that day, and the sound felt like a breeze sweeping some of the clouds away. But in all seriousness, Margaret continued, "Love is work. It's like tending a tree. You water it, you prune it, you endure storms. But if you're patient, its roots grow deep, and nothing can shake it." Emily looked at the oak, its roots breaking through the soil, strong and enduring. She wondered if her heart could ever grow roots again after all it had suffered. Suddenly, a younger voice called from behind. "Grandpa, Grandma, telling love stories to strangers again." Emily turned to see a man in his early 30s, tousled brown hair, friendly smile. He wore a plaid shirt and carried a box of pastries. "This is Alex, our grandson," Margaret said proudly. Alex nodded to Emily, his eyes curious. "You must be Emily. Sarah mentioned you. Visiting Oakwood, huh?" Emily nodded, feeling slightly awkward. "Yes, just for a few days." Alex set the pastry box on the table, smiling. "Perfect timing then. My grandparents have a way of making people believe in love whether they want to or not." He glanced at Henry and Margaret with affection, but Emily caught a flicker of sadness in his eyes, as though he too had once been broken. "Do you believe in these stories?" she asked, her voice tinged with doubt. Alex shrugged, his smile faint. "I didn't. Not for a long time. But watching them, I think maybe there's still hope." His words pulled Emily's gaze back to the Thompsons, standing hand in hand, inseparable. A wave of emotion rose within her, not a flood of hope, but a small spark enough to make her want to stay, to understand more. Margaret, sensing the shift, suggested gently, "Emily, would you like to help us recreate a memory?" Emily frowned, intrigued. "What memory?" Henry chuckled, drawing Margaret close to the oak. "Our first kiss, right here in 1955. Want to see it?" Emily nodded, despite the lingering doubt in her chest. They stood beneath the oak lantern light, casting a soft glow over their faces. Henry took Margaret's hand, his eyes tender as on that first day. "Miss, would you honor a poor soldier with a kiss?" he teased. Margaret laughed, leaned in, and they shared a brief, gentle kiss, one that carried 60 years of meaning. Emily watched tears sliding down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from realizing that love, imperfect as it was, could endure. Like the oak, weathered yet thriving. Beside her, Alex whispered, "They make it look easy, don't they?" Emily nodded, wiping her tears. "But it isn't right." Alex gave a small, bittersweet smile. "No, I've failed too, just like you. But looking at them, maybe I'll try again." His words mirrored her own pain, yet also reminded her she wasn't alone. Margaret turned back, drawing Emily into a warm embrace. "You'll stay for the celebration, won't you, dear? This oak likes souls like yours." Emily smiled, her first genuine smile in a long time. "Yes, I'll stay." She looked at the oak, felt its life pulsing through the roots, deep in the earth. Inside her, a seed of hope had cracked open. Small though it was, She knew she wanted to tend it just as the Thompsons had tended their love across 60 years. She wasn't ready to love again, not yet. But beneath the oak, she began to believe that one day she would. Sunset draped oakwood in golden orange silk, bathing the park in a dreamy glow as though the whole world had paused to witness a sacred moment. The ancient oak, its branches thick and full, stood tall at the center, adorned with glowing lanterns that shimmered like tiny stars casting a warm, gentle light. Emily stood near the cream-covered table, a bouquet of daisies in her hands, her heart still stirred by the Thompson story and the kiss they had just recreated beneath the tree. Their words, their tender gestures, were like drops of water nourishing the fragile seed of hope within her, though it still felt as breakable as glass. The park buzzed with life now. About 20 people gathered, family, friends, and neighbors of the Thompsons, all encircling the oak. Laughter and chatter mingled with the soft melody of Unchained Melody playing from a small speaker, a song bridging past and present. Emily watched children darting between adults, elderly couples holding hands, and Alex, the Thompsons' grandson, arranging chairs with quiet focus. She felt like an outsider, yet the atmosphere pulled her in, whispering that perhaps she belonged here, even if just for this fleeting moment. Margaret, dressed in a simple yet elegant pale blue dress, approached with a smile radiant as sunset itself. "You've done wonderfully, dear," she said, gesturing at the lanterns and flowers arranged neatly. "Thanks to you, this place is more beautiful than we dreamed." Emily blushed, shaking her head. "I only helped a little. You and Mr. Thompson made it special." Margaret took her hand, a light but steady touch, silently assuring her that she belonged if only for this night. Looking around, Emily felt a wave of emotion swell within her. She thought of the nights in Richmond, scrolling past Facebook posts of others' happiness, feeling like a ghost among their smiles. But here beneath the oak, everything felt real. No Instagram filters, no hollow captions, just real people, real stories, and a love that had weathered 60 years of storms. She wondered if she could ever find something like that, or if her heart was too scarred to try again. Henry, in a gray suit worn soft at the collar, stepped into the center of the crowd and raised his hand for silence. The music faded, and all eyes turned to him. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his warm voice carrying through the quiet air. 60 years ago, Margaret and I stood under this oak and promised forever. We didn't promise it would be easy. We promised we would try every single day." He turned to Margaret, his gaze embracing her across the decades, and Emily felt her heart ache with admiration and yearning. Margaret joined him, her hand sliding into his. "We've had days like today," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "And we've had rainy days, days we thought we wouldn't make it through. This oak has seen it all, the laughter, the tears, and the kisses." She paused, smiling at Henry. "And tonight, we want to renew that promise before everyone we love." Applause rippled through the crowd, and Emily felt tears roll down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away, no longer ashamed of her weakness. She thought of Mark, of his promises that had vanished like smoke. But looking at the Thompsons, she realized love wasn't words, it was action. It was the choice to stay even when everything else crumbled. She thought of Mark's message, of his plea to return, and for the first time she felt certain she didn't need him. Not because she had stopped loving him, but because she deserved someone who would choose her, like Henry had chosen Margaret. From his pocket, Henry drew a small piece of paper yellowed with age. "This is the vow we wrote in 1955, he said, voice trembling with emotion. "Tonight we read it again, not because we kept every word, but because we kept trying every day." He began to read, his voice shaking but strong with feeling. "I promise to love you through sunny days and stormy nights, through laughter and through tears. I promise to hold your hand no matter how rough the road may be." Margaret continued, her voice like a song. "I promise to stand by you, not because you are perfect, but because I choose you every single day." When she finished, Henry leaned down and kissed her softly. The crowd erupted in applause, the sound rising like music mingling with the lantern light and the fading sunset. Emily stood there, tears spilling freely, not of sorrow, but of awe. She cried because she had realized that love, however difficult, could still exist, like the oak standing strong through every storm. Beside her, Alex touched her shoulder gently. "They make it look like magic, don't they?" he said, half teasing, half in wonder. Emily nodded, wiping her cheeks. "They make me think, maybe I was wrong to give up hope." Alex looked at her, his eyes carrying his own quiet pain. "I gave up too. But watching them, I think, I want to try again." "What about you?" Emily didn't answer right away. She looked at the oak, its branches swaying in the evening breeze, and felt something shift inside her. She remembered Margaret's words, "Love is work. It's a choice every day." She thought of all the years she had spent trying to mend what couldn't be fixed with Mark, and realized she didn't need to anymore. She deserved a love patient and enduring like the oak, slow but unshakable. Margaret suddenly stepped forward, drawing Emily toward the crowd. "Emily, would you like to share something?" she asked, her tone gentle but encouraging. Emily shook her head, startled. I'm not good at speaking in front of people." But Margaret's steady, tender gaze made refusal impossible. Emily took a deep breath, stepping forward, feeling as though the world itself was watching. I used to think love was dead." She began, her voice unsteady. "I thought it was nothing more than empty promises on social media, things that vanish the moment life gets hard. But watching Henry and Margaret, I see that love isn't about perfection. It's about standing in the rain together. It's about choosing each other every single day." She paused, tears falling again, but this time she smiled. "I don't know if I'll ever find that kind of love, but tonight, I want to believe that I can." Applause broke out, and Emily felt as though a heavy weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She looked at the Thompsons, saw their smiles, and knew she had found a piece of herself beneath the oak. As the celebration went on with hugs, stories, and laughter, Emily touched the oak's rough bark. She felt its strength, a reminder that her heart, though scarred, could still grow again. The sunset faded, but within Emily a new light had kindled, small but steady, like the lanterns glowing in the oak's branches. The echoes of the Thompsons' 60th wedding anniversary lingered in the oakwood air as sunset faded, yielding to the gentle embrace of night. The lanterns strung upon the old oak tree glimmered like scattered stars, casting a warm golden glow across the radiant faces of family and friends. Emily stood near the tree's roots, a bouquet of daisies in her arms, her heart rippling with emotions she hadn't felt in months. The Thompsons kissed their renewed vows and even her own unexpected words before the crowd had left her feeling lighter, as though a burden from her past had finally been swept away by the wind. She glanced around as people began tidying up their laughter, mingling with the fading notes of unchained melody from the small speaker. Alex, the Thompsons' grandson, approached with a steaming cup of hot apple cider. "You spoke beautifully," he said, his friendly smile softening the sorrow still lingering in his eyes. "I didn't expect you to be that open." Emily blushed, shaking her head. "Neither did I. But something about this place, your grandparents, this oak, it made me want to speak." Alex nodded, sipping his cider, his gaze drifting toward the oak. "I get it. I used to feel the same, thinking love was just some cruel joke fate plays on us." He paused, his voice lowering. "I once loved someone, and she left. No reason, no explanation. I swore I'd never open my heart again." Emily studied him, a surprising sense of kinship stirring within her. "And what changed?" she asked softly. He smiled faintly, gesturing toward his grandparents who were chatting with a group of old friends. Them. "Every time I thought love was meaningless, I looked at them and realized it wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone who stays through everything." His words mirrored Emily's own thoughts. She remembered Mark, how she had fought to hold on only for him to let her go. And now beneath the oak, she understood she didn't need to cling to someone who was never willing to stay. "You're right," she said, her voice firmer now. "I used to think love was a destination, but maybe it's more like this oak, something that needs time, patience, and care." Alex's eyes brightened. "You learn quickly. Maybe we should come back here often. Let the oak remind us." Emily laughed her first unguarded laugh in a long while. Maybe? Will you be here long? Just a few more days, Alex replied. But I'll return for the Harvest Festival. What about you? Emily hesitated, then smiled. I think I want to come back to Oakwood more often. She didn't say it aloud, but in her heart, Oakwood had become more than just her hometown. It was the place where she had rediscovered a piece of hope she thought she'd lost. As the evening wound down, Emily helped the Thompsons tidy up. Margaret embraced her warmly, whispering, "You made today more special, dear." "Don't forget this oak, all right?" Emily nodded, feeling as if an invisible thread now bound her to the couple, to the oak, and to her own healing heart. She pulled out her phone and snapped a photo of the tree beneath its lanterns, the branches shimmering like a fairy tale. She posted it on Facebook, something she wouldn't have done just days ago, with the simple caption, "Hope beneath the oak." As likes trickled in, she didn't feel jealousy or bitterness for the first time. She felt enough. Walking home under the silver moonlight, Emily's heart felt lighter. She thought of Margaret's words, "Love is work. It's a choice every day." She thought of Alex, of the pain he had endured, and the way he still smiled, still believed in second chances. She wasn't ready to love again, not fully, but she no longer wanted to live in fear of heartbreak. She wanted to live to try to let her heart grow new shoots, just as the oak had for centuries. When she arrived home, her mother Ellen sat in her armchair with a cup of tea. "You look happier," she observed, her eyes sharp and knowing. Emily smiled, nodding. "I think I am. Oakwood. It has something special." Ellen chuckled, asking no further questions, though her eyes suggested she understood that her daughter was finding her way back to herself. Upstairs, Emily opened her phone and gazed again at the photo of the oak. She thought of Mark's message, but this time it didn't sting. She typed quickly, "I wish you well, but I need to move on." She hit send, then deleted his number, feeling as though she had released a dried leaf into the river, letting it drift away forever. She lay in bed, eyes closed, and the image of the oak filled her mind. She saw herself beneath its branches, not with Mark, but with someone yet to come, someone who would choose her as Henry had chosen Margaret. She smiled, small but genuine. "Thank you, Oak," she whispered, before sleep took her, gentle as the moonlight at her window. Tomorrow she would leave Oakwood, return to Richmond, to the busy rhythm of work and unread emails. But she knew she would carry something from this place, not a hollow promise, but a seed of hope planted beneath the oak, ready to sprout when the time was right. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in months, she wasn't afraid. She believed that, like the oak, her heart could weather storms, and one day it would flourish again. Morning sunlight streamed through the window of Emily's small Richmond apartment, painting long golden streaks across the worn wooden floor. She sat curled in an armchair, a hot cup of coffee in her hands, the rising steam like fragile dreams drifting into the air. 2 weeks had passed since the anniversary celebration beneath the oak tree in Oakwood, yet the image of that night, the towering oak, the glimmering lanterns, the Thompsons' kiss, remained etched in her mind like an unfading painting. Life had returned to its routine office work, an inbox overflowing with emails and the endless noise of the city. But something within her had shifted, small, yet resilient, like a sprout breaking through the soil toward the light. Emily gazed out the window, at Richmond's concrete towers, tall and impersonal. She remembered the days before Oakwood, when every morning felt like a battle against loneliness, and memories of Mark. She had once believed her heart was irreparably shattered, that love was only an illusion crafted on social media. But now, she no longer scrolled through Facebook with envy or bitterness. The photo she had posted of the oak, captioned "Hope beneath the oak," still drew likes and comments from friends. Yet what made her smile was not the attention, but the sense that she had reclaimed a part of herself in those real, unfiltered moments beneath the ancient tree. She set down her coffee, stepped onto her small balcony, and looked at the tiny oak sapling she had bought from a Richmond nursery. Barely a meter tall, its green leaves delicate and thin, it nevertheless stirred in her a strange connection, as if it carried a piece of the oakwood tree within it, a living reminder of what she had learned. She watered it gently, brushed her fingers across its leaves, and whispered, "You'll grow, won't you? No matter the storms." She smiled, realizing she wasn't only speaking to the tree, but also to her own heart. Her phone buzzed on the table, a message from Alex the Thompsons' grandson. "How are you? The Harvest Festival in Oakwood is coming up. Will you be back?" Emily's lips curved into a smile as her fingers hovered over the screen. She remembered that evening under the oak when she and Alex had shared their scars. He hadn't promised to erase her pain, hadn't tried to replace Mark, but the sincerity in his voice and the quiet hope in his eyes had reminded her she wasn't alone. "I'll be back," she typed, adding a small smiley face. "Thanks for the reminder." Sitting down, she opened the notebook she had bought after the ceremony. Its pages were mostly blank, but she had begun filling them not with diary entries, but with fragments of Oakwood memories. On the last page, she had written Margaret's words, "Love is work, a choice every day." Reading it again, Emily felt a surge of emotion. Oakwood had taught her that love wasn't a perfect snapshot for Instagram. It was a journey uneven, painful at times, but worth it if met with patience. She thought of Mark, of how she had clung to something that was never truly hers. Her final message to him, "I wish you well. But I need to move on," had been her first step toward letting go, not from hatred, but to make space for new hope. She recalled the Thompsons' story, the lost jobs, the illness, the grief of losing their son, and how through it all they had still chosen each other beneath the oak. Once she had thought their love was a miracle. Now she understood it wasn't magic, but perseverance. It was the small kisses, the promises kept, even as time pressed on. "You deserve a love like that," Margaret had told her, and now Emily believed it. She deserved someone who would stand in the rain with her, as Henry had stood with Margaret as the oak had weathered every storm. Her phone buzzed again, this time a call from Margaret. "Emily, dear, how are you?" came the warm voice like an embrace over the line. Emily smiled, answering, "I'm well. I just watered my little oak." Margaret laughed full and bright. "Good girl. That oak will remind you everything takes time. You'll come to the Harvest Festival, won't you? We'd love to see you again." "I'll be there," Emily said firmly. "I don't want to miss standing beneath the oak again." "The oak will be waiting for you," Margaret replied, her smile audible through the phone. "And so will we." When the call ended, Emily opened her laptop to check work emails, but her mind no longer spiraled into the old patterns of stress. She had deleted her dating apps, not because she had given up on love, but because she wanted to focus on herself first. She wanted to tend the fragile hope inside her as she cared for her little oak sapling. She drafted a new email, this time to Sarah. "I'll be back for the Harvest Festival. Thank you for bringing me to the oak." It changed everything. Pressing send, she felt as though she had just made a promise to herself. That night, Emily lay in bed, eyes closed, and the oak rose vividly in her mind. She saw herself standing beneath its vast canopy, feeling the strength of its roots, hearing the whispers of the wind in its leaves. In her dream, she wasn't alone. A figure stood beside her. Not Mark, not anyone specific, but someone who would choose her as she would choose them. She saw herself sharing a kiss under the oak, not to complete a fairy tale, but to begin a new journey, one of patience, one of small, daily choices. When she awoke, she felt lighter, as if she had left a piece of her past beneath the oakwood tree. She glanced at her balcony, where the little oak reached toward the morning sun. "We'll grow together," she whispered, and her smile, though modest, carried the strength of roots, deep, enduring, ready to withstand any storm. Her journey was only beginning, but under the oak's light, Emily believed that one day her heart would flourish again, like the great oakwood tree, steadfast and green through the passage of time.